The guide takes us to an area a bit further inland, but not too far from the water. Trees partially obscure our location, and there's enough room to watch the coast in case prowlers start to emerge from the water. Essentially, it's a place where an ambush would be hard.
If any of you see anything at all, speak up. We don't want them to sneak up on us.
Almost automatically, each member of the group turns to a different direction. For a brief second, I feel a flicker of pride. This night may have been awash with misery, but we're still here for each other. As the sky continues to fade from pale to purple to a muted blue, the waters stay silent. For the first time, nothing happens. It is a miracle. Suddenly, my chest is lighter and the air is fresher. The first pricks of light appear over the horizon, stinging my eyes after such a long journey through darkness. A sound catches my attention and I move my focus towards its direction. The guide is opening the latch on his lantern again. He gently, almost respectfully, blows out the light.
We no longer have to worry about the Nixie. It is over for today.
I'm almost unable to keep tears of relief from pouring out at those words. We made it through the night. We survived. No one feels the need to speak. We look at each other, an understanding passing between us. Then we find our own space, as comfortable as we can get, and lie down for the rest we weren't sure would ever come. My eyes, can we... Yes. Sorry, I was just moving the mic. Yes, obviously this is going to be very, very different. Only, if any, only some will be fast-forwarded, I feel like. Besides me, Bemele and Margret are still fast asleep. Skip. Bemele wakes, suddenly rising with alarm and startling Margret awake as well. My mouth opens, then shuts, and after a moment of fumbling, a word finally escapes.
Hello.
Bemele gives me a gentle smile and makes his way over to me. Margret follows suit.
Morning.
Is it even morning anymore?
Margret tries to speak light-heartedly, however it doesn't do much to improve the mood. A pocket of quiet descends over us.
We should eat something soon. Margret, do you have enough supplies?
Yes, I think I'll be alright with what I have.
That's a relief. The two of us have plenty of rations, though, so if you need anything, you can always ask.
Margret sighs and presses her fingers to her temples, acting as if she's fed up with us.
You know, the two of you need to stop looking out for everyone else so much.
Emily winces at the statement without vocalizing what's on his mind. Margret and I share a glance. This is about the person we left behind yesterday, the person we didn't help.
I'm sorry, I didn't intend.
It's not your fault.
It goes quiet between us once more. A distinct rustling of the leaves around catches my attention. The guide appears emerging from the thicket. Okay. Margret appears to be a little uncomfortable at his return. Bemele glares at him as he makes his way over.
The Nixie will not tread on land in daylight. However, being near the shoreline is still dangerous. If you leave the center of the island, remain cautious. Before the sun sets, I will be in this area. It would be wise to meet me here before nightfall.
Why did we have to leave him behind?
I sharply turn towards Bemele as he snarls and confronts the guide.
If you would just let him follow behind us, he would be alive.
The guide looks away, seemingly unaffected.
If all you're going to do is leave everyone to be lost, then why bother guiding us at all?
Despite Bemele's severe words, the guide apparently considers his piece here finished. He turns towards the forested area from which he came.
Wait!
Bemele calls out to the guide, reaching towards him. Before he can make contact, I quickly place a hand on his shoulder. I think the game is frozen again, so we're just gonna wait a little bit. I feel like that's just a comment. Wait. Oh, encoding overloaded. Consider turning down video settings or using a faster encoding preset. Excuse me? I don't think this game needs that. Why is it doing this? I don't know why it's doing this. It's actually frozen the game. The game is actually frozen. And the game died. Okay, I don't know why it did that, but I accidentally skipped ahead a bit too far. And but basically the last choice was Margret stop. Hopefully it won't do that shit again. I hope it hasn't messed with the recording too much, but I don't know. Lingering for only a moment, I start following the trail Margret took. It may have been the game just fucking up though. I don't know. I haven't actually seen any people having problems with it, but that's very weird. I catch up with Margret and I notice that her eyes are glistening with tears. As I try to move closer, she turns on me sharply.
What do you want?
Take a step back and keep my voice low.
I was worried.
Well, there certainly is a lot to be worried about.
Getting the guide up again. I can tell she does not appreciate my concern, but that's only to be expected. I've seen people react to grief and death in dozens of different ways, and she has every reason to be upset sitting on an island surrounded by a lake that breeds death.
I promise I will do everything I can to make sure you survive through the next night. So...
That's not the problem.
Her words begin strong, but falter and soften as she speaks. I can only watch her without the slightest idea of what to do. Margret sits atop a large mass of roots and covers her face with her hands. I step over to her and kneel down so that I can be at eye level again.
Margret?
She twists her body away from me.
Leave me alone.
No, I will not leave you.
Margret huffs, looking my way again only to properly glare.
Do you even know why I came out here? It wasn't as though I had anywhere important to be.
Then why? Why would you risk this journey?
Surely you already know the heart of my distress. Haven't you ever considered what you would do if you weren't able to be a guard?
It makes a point too good to dismiss, and I inwardly flinch when I consider it.
Yes. I originally sought this path not because I wished to protect others, but because I was concerned for my own self.
I don't blame you. If I had your coordination and ability, I would have learned to fight as well. As it stands,
I don't really
I
understand
can't
what's going
change
on
what
here,
I
if I'm
am.
being perfectly honest.
The settlement I come from is small, barely staving off collapse, really, the same as your town. You don't have to tell me which it is. They are all that way. My only real skill is the knowledge I've worked so hard to obtain. But, of course, a tiny village full of starving hunter-gatherers doesn't have much use for someone well-versed in history or management theories. Even if there are positions that require such knowledge, they are always given to those who are far older than myself.
Why does it feel like the music is being turned up? I'm very confused. Maybe her mic was just quieter and they didn't tune it up a bit? I don't know.
So what am I supposed to do? Continue to barely survive by being one of many seamstresses? Keep being pushed around by any person more powerful or with higher social connections? Leaving there would only take me back to the same position. It won't ever change that way.
Okay, but I don't think it was urgent that you leave. I still think you could have taken the safer route across the lake, like by going around, even if it took longer. Like, I think this is kind of weak sauce, unless I'm missing something. She drops her head into her hands and sobs. My heart aches as I kneel beside her, watching her shuddering form. I feel helpless, but what can I do? These problems are much different from what I have dealt with. Eventually, Margret seems to pull herself together.
No, I was tired of accepting those options. Sinnlos was my only chance. Only now do I realize how ridiculous a notion that is. Anyone who comes to this lake with a sense of hope will surely have it crushed.
Are you saying you wanted to become a guide?
Yes. Laugh
Oh,
at my
okay.
ambition if you wish. People may fear the current guide and may even blame him for the people he cannot save. But at least he has respect. Not only that, the heads of the area give him enough support to live a comfortable life. From all I'd gathered about the lake, being strong or good with a weapon didn't matter a lick. The most important qualities for a guide were being observant and shrewd, and being able to look past the struggles of someone else. But how wrong I was.
Her voice rises.
I haven't the slightest ability to deal with sinking bridges and confrontations with those horrible monsters. And even though I thought I'd lost all ability to care about the troubles of others, I still feel awful about what happened earlier. I haven't a chance of making it as a guide, which means I have no hope anywhere.
She covers her face once more and resumes her cries. Hesitantly, I reach out and place my hand on her shoulder. Surprisingly, she doesn't shake it off. We sit quietly like that for several moments.
You don't have to be a guide. Once this is over, you never have to come back here. There has to be something else out there for you. And if something does not yet exist, then we can create it ourselves.
Margret chortles a bit.
What a silly idea. But if I did have to choose between returning to the normal world or staying here, I'd rather go back home.
I squeeze her shoulder and she at last looks up at me, the tears gone from her eyes.
Thank you for sharing this with me.
Thank you for listening. You have an unexpectedly soft heart.
I must have noticed the slight twinge in my face.
That isn't a bad thing, Kika.
I look away, eyes toward the ground.
I know it can hurt to care, but it also lets you lessen the pain of others. I think it would be much better if everyone cared a little bit more, rather than less.
You're not wrong. I feel tears forming in my eyes now as I smile back at Margaret.
Thank you.
Margaret returns my look. I take a seat on the roots beside her, and for a time we sit in silence, simply being there for one another. Eventually, I turn towards her.
Perhaps we should go check how everything is on the island.
Margaret nods.
That seems like a fair thing to do. We can't keep sitting here forever, unfortunately. I'll come with you.
Are you sure you'll be alright without your glasses? There are a lot of places to catch your foot or dress on.
Margaret laughs lightly.
I'm sure I'll be fine.
Offer her my arm. She sighs softly and chides me teasingly.
Really, you are too much.
She then accepts. Together we head toward the interior of the island. Margaret and I head through the wooded part of the island. There isn't anything that could be called a path, but we manage to pick our way through the bush quite well. Through a thinner strand of trees, we briefly catch sight of the guide standing on one of the beaches. Seems fine, but even though I'm sure if he turned his head towards me, he makes blah 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 blah. I think I can skip this a bit. I would not mind walking. Wait, shit, what am I doing? I have this stupid option on for unseen text. Gaze back. I catch Margaret, sorry, I've lost so much, but it's fine. I catch Margaret's eyes and we spend a moment sharing a gentle connection. For a brief moment, all of the troublesome circumstances seem to float away from our minds and we enjoy each other's company. I wish it could go on for so much longer, but it's only a while later that I have to speak up.
We really should rest before nightfall.
I'm fine with that idea.
All right?
I got an achievement called Company. Oh. Bemele leads us over to the area where the guide mentioned we were going to meet. Margaret and I sit together. She lightly rests her head against my shoulder. The three of us quietly wait for the guide's arrival, occasionally chatting with one another as we rest. The sky turns orange as sunset comes upon us. As the colour seems to drain from the world, being consumed by the fog, the guide makes his appearance.
It's almost time.
I nod and feel myself grow tense. We truly are about to return to those bridges. All of us wait in an uncomfortable silence until night falls. We silently stand as one. Wait, I think we can skip a little bit. Yeah. Behind me, I hear Bemele and Margaret's unsure footsteps. I think we can skip again. Yeah. Emily's face immediately sours and he isn't able to stay silent about his feelings.
So we're going to waste our time standing idly by. There's hardly enough time to make the trip as it is.
Complaining won't make these bridges come any sooner, though I sympathize with your frustrations. The wait had already been tense as it was. Not knowing how much longer it will last makes it that much more dreadful.
Time is by far the least of our worries. On the bridges we are constantly moving, which makes it easier to avoid the prowlers. However, this island does not
Probably
offer
skip again, yeah. Oh, I wonder if those fires had anything to do with this. Bemilay's words are biting as he wonders aloud. The guide answers Bemilay firmly, wanting to put an end to his speculation.
No. Whatever magic controlling the bridges is inconsistent. Humans haven't found a way to impact it. We can only do temporary physical damage to the boards.
Bemilay is still displeased. Margret moves into discussion. Her mood is rapidly declining as well. I feel like we can skip again. Okay, Bemilay spits hatefully under his breath.
Of course you would.
True, generosity is not something I would expect from the guide, but that is not the conversation we need to have at this moment. The guide has made his decision and we must make ours.
If you were staying by the shore,
Okay,
perhaps
when
I could
we
be
skip a little bit?
somewhat
Okay.
further back from you.
Good
I'd say
suggestion,
that's
Kika.
likely our best
I take my place in the middle of the shore while Bemilay and Margret hover closer to the island's core on the line between dirt and sand. After getting a sense of where they are, I turn my gaze ahead. I cry out desperately into the void where Margret and Bemilay stood.
What happened?
There's silence, then the possible sound. Bemilay has his hand placed on her
I
shoulder.
didn't see the thing either. The monster blended in far too well with the dark, crooked trees of this place.
He gives me a sad smile as I approach the two closer.
We can make a small fire for light.
Bemilay begins to gather dry twigs, stones, and grass to craft a fire with. Margret strokes the fire with Bemilay feeding in twigs. And skip. Margret attempts to smile at me and Bemilay waves as I cautiously back up to my original position. Okay, and then we can skip again, and I can throw the lantern, and then we do the now. Okay, there we go. Bemilay starts to laugh incredulously through uneven breaths.
Such recklessness. I can hardly believe it worked.
Margret chimes in, equally amazed and exhausted.
I don't know how we managed to do nothing wrong. That feels far more fitting for this journey.
Yes, you could have burnt your fingertips off. Or perhaps the bridges could have gone up in flames.
Margret looks at him curiously. Bemilay gives her a wink.
That would have been the outcome if I was handling the torch, you think?
Margaret's lips quirk into a smirk.
Yes.
We treasure the moment of triumph for a little more before the guide ends his silence.
We need to start walking. We've already lost much time as it is.
I quickly straighten myself out and mull over our current situation. We start to consider how we are going to travel now that we only have 2 lanterns.
I can stay ahead in between the guide's light and yours. I will be fine there.
At that, I become fraught with worry. I look over at Bemilay, concern rioting through my body as I wonder how he'll fare being so far away from a light source.
Well, the 3 of us could walk together. If there's one person close by,
Bemilay and I confer with our eyes before silently agreeing with one another. We nod.
Okay, we'll do that then.
Probably skip a little bit more, okay? There likely isn't a reason for it, it's just another piece of madness.
Unnatural black water has a great deal of magic within. That is the most reasonable source of the bridges. If this maze is formed without an intelligent creator, that would explain its treacherous nature.
The guide breaks his cautious steps, testing the security of the bridge. I think we can do this. Bemilay elects to lead and starts going forward, inching gingerly across the trembling boards. Yep. Bemilay's foot has snapped through the bridge. Let's do nothing, because we die if we do something. Despite every cell in me screaming to help, I force myself not to make any sort of movements. Bemilay lifts his foot up from the cusp of the water and places it back on the board in front of him. Thank goodness, the entire section could have collapsed. Skipperoonie? That's insanity. Your staff creates more than enough light for the 4 of us. We could easily follow at a distance you would feel comfortable with.
Someone who wants to live will share their light with me.
After everything that's happened, after all we've done, you're going to abandon 2 of us this easily? You truly are a bastard.
Stop. If you take so much as one wrong step towards him, all the guide will do is flee. There is no chance that fighting will end in more people surviving.
Bemilay doesn't say any more, but grits his teeth. Margret is completely frozen, her mind racing to process everything.
Then What about two? Could you please keep two of us?
Bemele glowers at the guide hatefully. Besides me, Margret begins to whisper something to herself. I can't make out what it is. A torrent of thoughts rip through my mind as I try to find some other way.
Chica.
He's gonna be like, hey, I'll take you. Is it just me, or does he just not have any voice lines right now, or is that just what happens when you skip? I'm nowhere near as sharp as you are, we both always knew that. There's a fragile, self-deprecating smile on his face. It makes my heart ache.
My lantern broke because I foolishly dropped it. And I've already lost my glass.
I won't go, let someone else stay. Having lost his patience, the guide points a finger at Margaret, almost accusingly.
I've noticed the attention you've given her. Is that what this is about? Or perhaps you would prefer the both of you being left so you remain...
He's just saying the same thing.
Mad! Kika's reaction is what any normal human being would have. You can't pretend she's to blame.
I am aware. No one should have to take on such a grim task. That was why I did not ask it of you. I did it myself. However, that wasn't agreeable, so now the choice is hers, and it is time to decide.
I look over at Margaret and Bemele, hot tears flowing from my eyes. Take Bemele. The guide regards me with an unreadable expression. Without another word, he turns around and begins to walk down the bridge. Startled by the action, I take a step towards him. He turns just slightly to speak over his shoulder.
If further discussion is needed, then you will have to do it amongst yourselves.
The guide pauses for a moment.
If you wish, you may follow. No one else is to do so.
He stares straight into Bemele's face, referring to him without saying so directly. I stand frozen in place, shocked as the guide gets further away. It sinks in that the guide is actually leaving. He won't be coming back. I whip towards Bemele.
You have to go.
Bemele gapes at me furiously.
If the choice was between the two of us, you should have gone.
The people need you more than they need me, Bemele.
That's a lie. Even if it weren't, I wouldn't care.
I don't intend on leaping into the lake. I will find a way to manage. I'm sharp and quick-witted, after all.
I weakly grin. Bemele grimaces at the way I turned his own words against him.
Be safe, please. There isn't time left.
Bemele covers his eyes with his hand.
Damn you.
His face softens.
I will see you again. Somehow.
He lingers for only the briefest of moments before turning on his heel to catch up with the man who is no longer my guide. It was almost unbearable seeing him so hurt. He wanted to protect me as much as I wanted that for him. However, I still hold to my decision. My only regret is that it wasn't only myself who was left in the dark. We both stand alone, consumed by a creeping darkness. I gulp in a breath and exhale it slowly. My eyes are drawn back over to Margaret. It is difficult to face her after the choice I made, yet I am determined to accept my own decision and do whatever I can in order to assure her safety. Margaret stares at me wordlessly with intensity. I feel compelled to look away from her again. I refuse to give in to that temptation. Neither of us say anything as we watch the other. Margaret's narrowed eyes never waver as she peers into mine. What could she be thinking of? I can only guess. After a moment longer, Margaret sighs and breaks the staring wall by looking downwards.
Can't be that far from the shore by now. We may as well try to make it there, right?
The guide tells me to choose her, to choose Bemele, so...
Right. But...
My sentence trails off as I drown in my regrets. Margaret shakes her head lightly.
Let's not talk about it. If I were in your place before, it's not as if I would have been able to make a better choice.
She pauses for a moment to furrow her eyebrows.
And it is my own foolish fault that I ended up in this situation in the first place. Blaming you for any of it would be the act of a child.
It is painful to hear her speak in such a way. I don't deserve this much understanding, not after what I did. Still, she has a point. I shouldn't get caught up in my desire to apologize. This isn't over yet. The two of us dash forward and take another branching path out of the bridges. Can I skip some of this? No. Although it seems like I should be able to. Margaret teeters a little behind me and puts in her all to keep up the pace, despite the fact that it's clear she doesn't have very much experience with this kind of thing. Our confidence is shattered as we turn down another path and are forced to come to a halt. In the distance, we see it, a mass of slow-moving figures creeping our way. I narrow my eyes.
Fowlers.
Really, I can skip this. Yeah. Wait. I need to wait the timer. Okay. I keep a firm hold on the hilt of my sword, however I make no moves to draw it.
It isn't safe to get near those things without a light. And besides, I have an idea.
I steal a glance at Margret between keeping an eye on the groups of monsters surrounding us. She delves a hand into her pocket and retrieves a small book. She opens it up and tears out a page of the thick paper. She pockets the rest of the book and crumples the paper into a ball. Margret looks up at the creatures herself to make sure they haven't drawn too near, eyeing them intensely. She pulls something out of her pocket, and with a start, I realize that it's a match. Surely she won't. Margret catches onto my worried expression and shakes her head.
I'm not going to throw this onto the bridges, if that's what you're thinking.
Focuses back to her supplies and ignites the match. She lights the paper ball on fire and tosses it off the side of the bridge directly into the water. The incoming light scares off some Nixie, who scatter back into the depths. Amazingly, the light isn't immediately extinguished. It continues to burn atop the surface. The water is too dense to be disturbed by the slight weight of the paper. I crack a large smile at the sight.
That's excellent. You are truly clever.
Margret flashes me a grin of her
I would
own.
certainly hope so, considering how much credit I've rewarded myself for my supposed intelligence.
She creates a few more paper torches and starts walking forward, tossing them on the lake in all directions. I follow along behind her, watching as the remaining Nixie retreat further away from the multiplying lights, dancing on the water. As soon as the area is thoroughly cleared of danger, the two of us march on ahead. The sloshing sound of water captures our attention. I look back. There's motion from under the surface, enough to begin displacing water. The lights start to go out from the splashing, if not becoming completely swallowed by the lake. Margret and I share a glance with one another before mutually deciding not to linger. We start rushing across the bridges with renewed vigor and don't stop until the wet sounds of the crooked monsters are long behind us. I take advantage of the break to look around with more care. It is nothing but the essence of Sinnlos. Oh wait, this is just the same, isn't it? Okay. It's not letting me skip. The atmosphere surrounding this place is even more oppressive and dense in the dark. Now that I have been forced to take in our situation, I am engulfed by the sheer emptiness of it all. The silence is deafening. It then dawns on me what that means, and I wildly turn my head left and right to scan the area. There's nothing there. There's nothing here, not even a glimpse of movement. The black water waits almost peacefully in the gloom. It's unbelievable. Sinnlos is the Nixies' territory. They felt inescapable. However, this lake is vast, and the Nixie are not omnipresent, nor omniscient.
Of course.
I feel a surge of hope well up in my chest.
What are you talking about?
Margret asks me through her exhausted, wheezing breaths.
There aren't any Nixie in this area of bridges as far as I can tell. We may not have to worry about them for now. We should take this opportunity to fully rest. Then we can progress somewhat slowly for a time. Capturing the attention of those beasts with loud steps is something we must avoid.
He perks up.
Yes, you're right. That sounds like a plan.
The two of us stand quietly together, regaining our strength for the path ahead. Being in such complete isolation with no end in sight is a strange sensation. It drains me of motivation, making me feel as though our existence has already been lost. But one look at Margret is enough to shake me of such notions. We can't give up now. Despite the nothingness that encompasses us, we still have much to lose. After a short period of time, we start to make our way across the bridges as cautiously as possible. Margret and I walk together side by side. We stay ever vigilant for any sounds of danger from the lake. She sighs softly beside me with a shake of her head.
If only I had thought of that paper trick sooner. The guide might have let us stay.
Don't blame yourself for that. The guide likely would have said that it agitated the Nixie too much, or could set the bridges on fire accidentally and was too risky to attempt.
Margret smirks slightly and snorts at my meager attempt to voice the guide's thoughts.
That is exactly what he would have said.
I nod while entranced by my own thoughts.
If anyone should be feeling regret right now, it would be me. The reason my lantern broke was because I had thrown it to assist the guide when we were on the island.
It was impossible not to have noticed your little act of heroism. I had been wondering if that was it.
I'm sorry.
Please don't apologize. Unfortunately, we can't just leave the guide to fend for himself like he does for us. You had to be sure he remained to lead the group. It's your tendency for decision-making that is probably why he wanted you to stay.
Pangs of pain sting in my chest. No matter how much I try to ignore it, I feel terrible about making Margaret remain behind in this bleak, spiraling maze while I chose someone else to accompany the guide. I dip my head down in a hot flush of shame.
You couldn't force the guide to take the both of us. You tried.
Tears form in the corner of my eyes at her gentle words.
You're far too kind, Margret. No matter the situation, I still made a decision, and it wasn't to ensure your safety.
She hardens her face and looks at me seriously.
When the guide said that only you could go, a part of me was thankful. You would be fine with him. But I admit, another part of me disliked being the one left behind. Not by the guide, but by you. It's silly, I know. Still, in a way, it's comforting that at least we're still with one another, even counting the circumstances that led to this. Besides, with no lantern, no glasses, and an indifferent guide, I severely doubt that I'd be faring much better under his care.
True. Margaret grows wistful and speaks
What
softly.
I'm trying to say is that I never would have been able to make the kind of decision that you had to, and I think it made sense for everyone.
I feel tears well up in my eyes from gratitude to Margaret for all her kindness. She chuckles lightly.
If that isn't a sign that I'm not meant to be a guide myself, then I don't know what is.
I dry my tears with my sleeve with a small sniffle.
You've truly decided against that?
Yes, absolutely. I never want to see any lake again for as long as I live.
Completely fair.
Since I don't have any plans, I'll have to find a nearby village on the other side to stay out for a time. I'll decide what the next step on my path will be then.
Knowing Margaret won't be stepping on these bridges again after this night eases my heart greatly. The future is starting to look bright somehow. I look at her shyly.
I would still like to help you, if that's possible.
A small bashful smile creeps onto Margaret's face.
Well, I suppose I could see what your town is like after all. I will need directions.
I beam widely at her. The air between us feels warm and with a light-hearted pleasance.
Directions are not nearly enough. For that journey, I will lead you myself. I'll be sure to bring you there safely, Margaret.
Margaret giggles under her breath.
Thank you. I'm positive you'll make for a better one than our last guide.
The two of us share a smile together for a moment's reprieve. However, for any of our wishes to come true, we need to refocus on the situation at hand. We allow the conversation to fade out. The last of our happy voices drift away from us and are absorbed into the mist. There is still not even a trace of a prowler on the bridges, nor any Nixie in the water. Both Margaret and I silently agree to speed up a bit. I don't know how much ground we have left to cover, however time is not a commodity we have to spare. We keep at this brisker pace for quite a while, however eventually we have to stop for a breather again. A very light but noticeable stirring becomes audible on the lake. I hope dearly that it's only the wind. There is an inkling of fear inside me that it isn't. We cut our rest short and continue forward at an even quicker pace. After a while longer of pushing ahead, the faint silhouette of land appears on the horizon. I nearly can't believe what I'm seeing. I attempt to steady my rising heart rate, getting close enough to land to see it only requires going towards it for long enough, but the true test is finding the bridge that will actually run aground. Still, we have an honest-to-goodness fighting chance. Margaret reaches over to take my hand into hers and squeezes lightly. I look at Margaret, reassuring. Her hold isn't out of fear as it so easily could be. This time it is from a determined anticipation. We start running, our footsteps in sync. We cross a long path and come across a strange sight. It's a bridge which curves in and becomes more narrow in the middle than usual. Eyeing the dubious bridge warily, I grow nervous at the idea of getting that close to the edge. Yet, we've never seen anything like this before. Could this possibly mean that this bridge is important? Then I hear it. The whispers of the Nixie. There's no mistaking it now. We've been found by them. My confidence hasn't gone, but Margaret huddles a little closer to me. Margaret surveys the area, looking at the bridge and then to the lake. Her features are marred with concern, however she manages to keep a brave face on.
We should keep going this way. There aren't any other branches here, and backtracking won't help us get to the shore. There's a bit of a limit on how much time we have to reach it.
I nod in agreement. At this point, going forward is our only
Could
option.
we possibly use burning paper to distract the Nixie again? It could keep those monsters away for long enough to cross this part. We could run after that.
Margaret doesn't reply immediately. She seems unsure of the idea. I realize it may not be possible to balance on the bridge while lighting and tossing paper torches all around.
Will you give me the supplies for it if there are any left? I'd like to make some.
Margaret dons a lopsided grin. She reads me as well as I do her.
You are very sharp, Kika, and very kind.
I blush slightly at her words, a smile from within growing on my face.
I'll crumple the paper ahead of time and hand them to you as we go. Then you can light and throw.
I gesture in agreement. The compromise is solid. Neither of us should be at too much risk if the job is shared between both her and myself. Margaret begins the monotonous job of tearing the pages out of the book and forming them into balls, while I keep watch for any sign of danger. As I stand quietly amid the ripping and crunching of paper, I can't help but let some curiosity leak out.
What is, or rather was, that book?
Margaret rips another page out as she answers.
It was a blank notebook. I had been filling it.
The fact that she brought it with her on this journey makes the contents easy to guess. It also makes it clear why she is so readily tearing it up. I take a step out on a limb and attempt to brighten the mood with a teasing comment.
This is the second time you've saved me by finding something unexpected to light on fire. Should I be concerned that you have a pattern of setting what's around you ablaze?
Her eyebrows shoot up and she abruptly snorts.
No, you should not. The Nixie are afraid of light. It has nothing to do with me.
Okay. I still thought it best to check.
We both share a small laugh. It certainly didn't compare to Margaret's skill in that area, but it pleases me that we were able to enjoy it regardless. Once we have a fair amount of pieces to work with, I take out my own set of matches. I ignite one by striking it on my rough leather belt, and Margaret hands me a piece of paper. I light the paper ball and toss it onto the abyssal lake. The light is jostled by a lone wave that definitely could not have been caused by the wind. The two of us begin to cross the bridge on forcibly steadied legs. I light up makeshift torches one after the other, tossing it wherever another flickers out. The water around us churns like a mill pond, however nothing within the lake has surfaced thus far. I toss another fireball onto the water, but something beneath it jerks violently and precisely enough to form a wave that engulfs the flame, leaving the water dark. Margaret gasps and hastily shoves another piece of paper towards me. I swiftly light and throw it out. The water is still for only a moment before the fire is put out again by the splash of an unseen hand. We freeze. I look at Margaret from the corner of my eye and whisper to her. Both Margaret and I are still in the middle of the narrow bridge, only inches away from the edge.
Give me all the paper you have left. I will throw it back the way we came. We need to get these creatures away from us.
Margaret nods shakily and dumps the remaining papers into my hands. She empties more from her pockets and places those in my arms as well. At least we didn't skimp on the amount made. I set them aflame as fast as possible, lighting two at a time, and launching them at the edge of the water before the fire can consume the paper. A chorus of hisses erupt from the Nixie underwater as a flurry of flames come towards them. A torrent of splashes echoes from beyond the bridges as they grow increasingly agitated at the foreign objects in their lake. I keep a few pieces of paper in my hands and whip towards Margaret.
Start moving! Quickly!
Margaret nods, slightly baffled. The two of us start to sprint down the narrow bridge, while the Nixies swim around, distracted by the flames. Once the previous batch of lights have burnt out, I ignite the rest of the papers in my hands and toss the collection of flames into the lake. That is the last distraction we'll get. We force our feet to go even faster as the sounds of sloshing water and unearthly murmuring grow closer to our heels. I gasp loudly as the bridge below us suddenly lurches to the side. The two of us brace against each other to steady ourselves as the bridge slowly tilts back into place. We gulp as we eye each other. This was not something we had prepared for. The bridge can't hold weight properly. If we step out of line, it could break. Yet we aren't afforded even a moment's reprieve as the sounds of the Nixie break through the haze of racing thoughts. We advance down the bridge, this time more aware of how we place our footing. Our quick pace means some mistakes are inevitable. The bridge starts to tilt again, and our eager eyes look up at us from right below the waterline. It bends towards the waiting hands of Nixie, and I pull Margaret back while leaning my weight to the opposite side. In a small miracle, the bridge is able to even back out. I release the breath I had been holding. Before the monsters can make a move on us, we push ahead. Finally, the boards start to widen out again. Margret relaxes her shoulders as they stop needing to brush against mine. My heart pounds from the adrenaline that fought against the need to move slowly and carefully despite the insane danger. The chorus of whispers increases as we get out of easy reach. The view of the shore draws steadily closer as we go down the path ahead, as does the light of the sun start to barely peek over through the heavy fog. Margret says something. It's too quiet for me to hear what it was, and I don't have the breath to ask her to elaborate. I'm running incredibly low on energy by this point, and I can tell from the way that Margret is panting she too is very tired. And then a dull thud vibrates through the boards.
Margret?
I slide to a stop on the slick bridge and turn to face behind me. Margret is on the ground. I don't waste even one more moment before going to her side.
All right. Can you stand? We have to move.
No, I can't keep running anymore, Kika. It's too much. There's nothing out there. There's never been anything out there. You can go by yourself.
Margret. My heart sinks at her words. Suddenly, our urgent situation seems much less important. I crouch down to be at her level. She bites back tears and tries to push me away.
I know you understand better than most that you can't force someone to do something. I can't do that here, but I can ask if you truly want this.
I rest my hand firmly on her shoulder.
Margret, you can make it. We can make it. Even if we don't know what's at the end of this path, we can see it with our own eyes.
My voice starts to shake and I barely get out one last sentence.
I don't want to go if you're not there with me.
Margret looks up at me through the tears. She's scared, but there's no longer a look of resignation. Still trembling, she starts to rise. I stand with her, a reserved smile forming. Once on her feet, Margret takes some deep breaths, trying to calm the panic inside her. She looks at me fiercely and nods. It's going to come. Tears of my own start to fall. I offer her my hand. Margret takes it without hesitation. We start to run again, and this time we do not stop. We cannot stop. The ever so slowly moving sunrise is our final chance to make it through this nightmare. My fists are curled tightly as we run, our lungs burning from the sharp, humid air. We keep pushing and pushing with nothing but a stubborn refusal to accept this as the end carrying our feet, until eventually we make it. We practically burst onto shore, rushing onto the solid ground and nearly collapsing. We both manage to distance ourselves from the waterline a decent amount before we earnestly crumple to the ground and try to steady our erratic breathing. Tears form in my eyes and flood onto my cheeks. We made it. Against all odds, we finally made it to the other side in one piece. I look towards Margret fondly. It fills me with joy that we are both here, just as I believed we could be. She is smiling. After a moment of rest, I force myself off the ground weakly and stand on quivering legs. I face Margret again, and this time she locks eyes with me. Margret pushes herself up and scrambles towards me. She moves in such a hurry and on such unstable legs that she manages to get tangled on the hem of her skirt and tumbles. We're close enough that I'm able to catch her before she hits the ground. I support her as she straightens her skirt out. I'm deeply grateful that I'm able to be there for her. She smirks at me, and I have to assume she's thinking about how my behavior makes me truly a typical guard. I just got the achievement determination. Sorry, I need to move. But suddenly we're embracing. A giddy laugh bubbles up from her and she buries her face in the crook of my neck. She hugs me tightly. I can't keep the blissful smile off my face and a new waterfall of tears spills down. Margret lifts her head from my shoulder and gazes into my eyes. Neither of us let go as we stay in place and drink in the sight of each other. Our foreheads brush lightly as we relish in the joy of being alive together. Noise besides us brings me out of the moment. I frantically turn to see where it came from. The disturbance is enough to immediately shoot the tension back up. It's an immense surprise and thrill when Bemele emerges into view. He stands a little ways away, almost gawking at what could potentially be a pair of ghosts in front of him. His momentary shock dissipates and a relieved smile easily replaces it. He murmurs quietly.
Alive.
My frayed nerves settle again. He made it to the other side. A reunion is intentionally interrupted by the final member of our group, The guide, who seemingly materialized out of nowhere, doesn't have a mind to let us get caught up in emotions on the shore of this lake.
It is time to leave this place. There is
Yeah,
nothing left for
we're
you here.
going. Why does the bad music always come back when you're around, huh? Upon being addressed by him, I rise to my feet. He has a calm look on his face, though there is force behind his serenity. I open my mouth in an attempt to speak. However, I quickly realize I have little idea of what to say. He left us behind, but it did indeed lead to success. Must I admit that forsaking others is correct? Or was that not truly the only way? And then the fog is removed from my thoughts. After everything that has happened, it becomes clear. I harden my face to match his serious disposition. There is something he is certainly right of. This lake isn't a place to linger. Going round and round in circles will never help. We cannot submit our lives or our minds to Sinnlos. What I must do if I truly want to defend others is to keep them from coming here at all. When I return to my village, I intend to make that information acutely known to our elder. For that to happen, we must leave.
Goodbye.
His eyes narrow as he looks over at me. I begin to feel uncomfortable under his scrutiny, but for a moment, I could swear I noticed him smiling slightly. However, it could easily be a trick of the morning sun. Bemele merely scoffs. It's perhaps for the best that Bemele is refusing to acknowledge him rather than deciding to get caustic. At this point, nothing can be done about that man. Margret steps over to us and regards the guide with a pointed expression.
This will be goodbye for us as well. I appreciate the opportunity you've graced me with. However, I won't be returning here.
The guide offers no reaction to her statement. In fact, he says nothing at all. Instead, he simply turns on his heel and leaves us alone once more. We make no attempt to stop him, watching him silently as he disappears into the landscape. It is painfully clear that no matter how meaningful this is for us, it is only another day in his life. Once the guide fully departs, Margret frowns harshly.
This all seems so terribly sad.
I peer at her empathetically and reach over to her hand. I take it in mine tenderly. She looks down at our joined hands and then at me, and manages a bittersweet smile. I regard the lake again. It is isolated and desolate, the mist still covering the surface like a suffocating rag.
Kika!
Margaret's worried voice beckons me back to the present. I turn my wistful face determined as I realize that there's still much to accomplish ahead of me.
We can't stay here any longer.
Margret considers the words with concern. Despite her hesitation, she brings herself to ask a tentative question.
Would it be alright for me to come along?
Of course. The village I'm going to isn't exactly safe. However, you are more than welcome to join me, and I will make certain that you are protected there.
Margaret's lips turn up into a warm smile as she nods graciously.
Thank you. I need some place to go so I can procure a new pair of glasses and a new way to make a living. Besides, you're forcing yourself to act like nothing affects you, and that simply won't do.
I blink a few times, unsure of how to respond to that. I resign myself to looking away with an awkward smile on my face. Margret hums a teasing tune as she cracks a grin. Her eyes drift closed for a moment, and she grows reflective.
You know, it's very strange. I felt trapped in my own life.
I didn't think this would be this long. Like, this ending would be this.
I was always running in
Ooh.
place, and there was no way to escape the small, miserable bubble I existed in.
She sneaks a glance at me before continuing.
That maze of bridges out there was much of the same, but we found a way out of that miserable place, and there was something for us at the end after all. I wonder if miracles like that can happen in the real world too.
It seems I'm not yet out of tears as I feel their presence growing.
There is. I'll make sure of it.
Margret regards me with a familiar teasing
Still
smile.
holding on to that idea from the island. Is there anything that can shake that determination of yours?
I half chuckle at the question.
I'm sure there has to be. However, I won't allow something that could break it to occur.
Margret chortles before she grins at me charmingly.
I'm glad. That's something I treasure about you, Kika.
I can't help being a bit bashful. It is so nice to let myself feel how I honestly do. Bemele clears his throat, capturing my attention. I drag my eyes away from Margret to him, with a simper on my face for ignoring his presence all this time. Then I snap back to Margret. I meet her deep inside her eyes.
It truly is time for us to leave this place.
Margaret's face glows with bravery and a new sort of inner strength.
Yes, let's go.
Hell yeah. We turn around and walk away from the lake. Without looking back or stopping, I close my eyes and whisper beneath my breath, soft as a falling leaf. To all those left behind within the lake of Sinnlos, I offer one last reverent parting word.
Farewell.
See ya. I hurried to Hemmer as quickly as I could. I already failed to help another during my journey. I could not afford to fail the villagers. They were grateful to see me, for it was a desperate... We've already read this. Bemele was of great help during the fight. His outwardly positive demeanour lifted the spirits of many around him, but I could see from the shadows in his eyes that he hadn't forgotten what we went through. Rather than be paralysed by it, he is pushing himself to be even stronger. I admire that about him, and I fully intend to support him the way he does for me. After putting Sinnlos behind her, Margret explained where she was originally from, though she had no plans on returning. Despite leaving everything she knew, Margret boldly looks towards the future. I respect her for her bravery and I hope for nothing more than the best. I was finally able to learn the name of the stranger we met on the bridges. Lou. As the guide predicted, he did not survive. He had requested to cross and been denied. He must have been truly desperate to attempt the crossing alone. I can only pray that those who cared for him will learn the truth of what happened. Yeah, we've not seen him yet. As the task in Hemmer comes to a close, I mentally prepare myself to return home. I'm all too aware that things can never be as they were. What I know for certain is that my village elder must be told that no one is to cross Sinnlos again. I have already told the Hemmer leaders the same. Not a single more person should have to experience what we did. Its darkness will remain with me for the rest of my days. Though so much was lost, I believe that our lessons will keep others from suffering the same way, and in the end, something will be gained. Margret returned to my village after the task at Hemmer was over. I insisted that she stay with me for a time while she grew accustomed to her new surroundings. While she still liked to tease that all the villagers were the same, she was grateful for the offer. We are working together to find a new career that is better suited to her talents than the one she was pursuing before, and it does not seem hopeless. She has already managed to acquaint herself with the village elder. I believe it won't be long before she finds a place she can fully shine. It is incredible to still find fulfillment in these small joys. Despite the pain and hardship, I will continue to do all I can to protect others, as well as the life I've come to love. And that's a cop-out of a gay ending. It wasn't truly gay. But yeah, I will see you in the next video. Bye!